Once in ancient India, King Janaka called an assembly of wise men of his times to deliberate on the highest truth, namely the Brahman. And into this hall of conference walked in sage Ashtavakra, who by his movement showed 8 curves in his body. When he made the entry, the entire assembly giggled. Sage Ashtavakra was a little amused, surprised, and perhaps somewhat disappointed. He looked at King Janaka and asked, "O king, you told me that this is an assembly of the seekers of truth, Brahmavettas. But I'm afraid they are only charmakaras. They are only cobblers, because they are not able to see beyond the skin. They have mistaken my skin cover as me. They are not able to distinguish between the appearance and the reality. In order to qualify as seekers of truth, they should have had a higher grade of consciousness, which is not there." Sage Ashtavakra had a Socratic kind of disillusionment. When Socrates, after listening to the oracle of Delphi, went out in the known world those days to meet the wise men, he was surprised at their ignorance. After moving from place to place, from one wise man to another, he returned to Athens, called his friends and announced that the declaration of the oracle of Delphi was true. He was the wisest man of the world. The reason was simple. All of us are ignorant. They are ignorant and I too am ignorant. The difference is I am aware of my ignorance and they are not. To put it in the original style, they know not that they know not. I know that I know not. Therefore, I am the wisest. Sage Ashtavakra had no such thing to declare. On the other hand, he had the modesty of Indian sagacity, said, Naham manne suvedeti, nanu vedeti vedacha. I don't claim that I know everything, but I can't even say that I don't know anything. With this, he joined the conference, and most of you might be knowing what happened next. Right today, we have one of his major contributions, Ashtavakra Gita. When he called the assembly an assembly of charmakaras, cobblers, it was a very harsh remark, unbecoming of sage Ashtavakra. He didn't mean to hurt anybody. He only made a statement of fact. Those who had assembled there were taken aback. They almost jumped out of their skin by the shock they received. And of course, they woke up to another level of awareness from where they looked at Ashtavakra and understood, later on appreciated him better. In a sense, we too have to jump out of our skin and raise ourselves to a level of consciousness to understand ourselves, everything around us better. Because we are, in fact, satisfied with mere impressions. A doesn't know B, B2 doesn't know A. They only have the general impression and they mistake the impression for the man. But the impression is not the person as much as a map is not the territory. When A and B are talking, in fact, four are present. The impression of A regarding B is on the left. The impression of A by B is on the right. A's impression of B, B's impression of A are two other entities present at the time of conversation. And every time they listen to each other, they pass it through this impression. A has an impression of B, and when B says something, it is interpreted through the impression A already has about him. This impression works as a prejudice, yes, but that is the only thing possible. The impression keeps on changing, keeps on improving. Of course, it never comes to a stage when one of them can claim to have known the other fully. Because to know the other is the greatest challenge. The other is always distant, the other is always absent, the other is always unknown, and therefore we make use of this situation, make it the target, clamp the enemy image on it so that we can blame it and kick it for all the discomforts we have in life. In order to know the other must permit it. He must open up. A can know B to the extent B reveals himself. Unless B agrees to reveal, A has no chance to know him. This revelation has a limit. It can't go beyond that particular limit. If B has lived for 70 years and every moment he had some experience or the other, to narrate those experiences, he needs at least 70 years. And during these 70 years, many more things must happen. Therefore, it is not logical to expect B to reveal himself at any point of time. Therefore, cannot expect A to know B at any point of time. But the whole effort is to know the other. And how can that be possible? We are within bracketed time and space continuum. We are sort of prisoners. Time and space are interpreted by us in our own way. Interpretation is the only value we discover in it. Object remains where it is, but by our interpretation, it reveals values. We understand space as object-specific. Unless there are objects strewn all around, here and there, we do not have a sense of distance. If we do not have a sense of distance, we don't have a sense of space. Time is event specific. Things keep on happening now, then, after some time. So this gives us the impression of happenings. And unless there are events taking place, we can never understand time. And we can never grow out of this time bracket. These are the handicaps to know each other. But the effort is to come up to a stage of consciousness, a level of consciousness, where things can be better seen, better understood. The process is incomplete, and we have to be satisfied with that. When we judge the other, we apply our own yardstick. And this yardstick is our invention. We try to judge the other as per our taste, as per our need, as per our will. We like the other to the extent we discover ourselves in him. We keep on loving ourselves throughout our life, nothing more than our life. When we discover our taste, our aspirations, our dreams, to some extent similar experiences as we have had in life, we discover ourselves in him, and therefore to that extent we like him. We only love ourselves discovered in him. So we are egoistic, egocentric, partial, and we are never in possession of the true knowledge. This gets extended in dimensions when you come to the collective identity. This is individual identity. This has grown. The result is a fractured society, hostile forces working against each other, battling cultures, nation states, religions, ideologies, all are clashing. Therefore, there is a very difficult world around us where we do not know what to do, where to go, what to believe, what not to believe. At this stage, a revision of our level of consciousness is absolutely necessary, because the divide lines on the ground become hazy when we reach a greater height. They disappear from another point. So if you keep on rising in a level of consciousness, differences are supposed to disappear, get diluted and disappear. This effort is to continue. Now, when we use the term consciousness, personally I feel that we do not have a precise definition. Consciousness is not just sensory response. Because my eyes are able to see, my ears are able to hear, I am conscious. This is wrong. Consciousness is much, much deeper. Consciousness is responsible for the sensory responses, but consciousness is not sensory response. Consciousness is not precisely defined, equally unknown and called the soul. If it is there, the creature is alive. If it is not there, the creature is dead. This again is an old faith. And interpretations are many, many, many. When Nietzsche looked around and found this confusion, he got fed up. He was a very bold person. He stood up and shouted, declared, God is dead. It sent a wave of shock all over the world. God is dead. Some said that, well, after all, it is a good riddance. Because if there is a God around here, we are not free. We don't feel free to work. It's a good riddance. Others said that, well, if God is dead, he was after all our creature, we have to create another. And yet others said that after the declaration of Nietzsche, God has become optional. If you believe he is there, if you don't believe, he is not. So, with this shock, we all entered into the 20th century when there was another such great declaration. By the advent of science and technology, man was dehumanized to such an extent that he started moving about like a programmed automaton. And thinkers looked at him and said, man is dead. God is dead, man is dead, what remains? All kinds of faith which we built around both God and man were shattered. Then Dr. Radhakrishnan was disturbed. He came out pleading for a recovery of faith. Recover faith, or else you perish. And he gave the terminal option to mankind: coexistence or no existence. Either you learn how to live together or you perish. To live with others, to be together, has been a perpetual challenge to man. He has succeeded at places but failed in more than one cases. He has failed. To be together is not that easy. To be together means mutual accommodation. It means sacrifice of one for the other. And for that we are not prepared. Self-centered, egocentric, imposing, extracting man wants to live at the expense of others. And this goes on. We extricate ourselves from this by changing our consciousness. Charles Darwin, in his theory of evolution, said that we have left behind the primates and prior to that the reptiles and etc., etc. All those stages we have left behind, and man has evolved out of this process. He has told us about the changes in the genetic anatomy. Anatomical change is a sign of evolution. This concept has undergone a change, and now we know that it is not this, but something very, very deep in us which evolves. and that is the evolution of consciousness. True evolution is the evolution of consciousness. When consciousness evolves and attains a higher level, an appropriate creature is born to hold it. So before man took this form, a human consciousness grew. But you don't leave all that behind. Transformation is not noticed, going beyond. It is rightly said, when you are talking to a man, you are actually addressing a crocodile, a horse, and a human being. The scientist comes in support of it and says, well, yes, beneath the human skull, there are 3 layers of brains. The topmost layer is the human brain. Beneath it, the smaller one is the mammalian brain. And still beneath, and not like small brain, is the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is represented by the crocodile, the mammalian brain represented by the horse, and the human brain by man. So this is what we carry in us, with us. The reptile can at any time raise its hood. Not the horse, even the predator can rise red in tooth and claw and pounce upon the other. All these are in us. We haven't left them behind. So much so that the earliest creature on earth is still in us in some form or other, maybe infinitesimally small, but it is there. And surprisingly, the great silence and the darkness out of which this creation came is also in us. So holding the entire past of the universe in us, we maintain this position and pass it on as the legacy to the future. So this shows that there is a constant evolution of consciousness, which is absolutely necessary, absolutely inevitable, and that contains the seed of solution. At the end of the long drawn debate as to what is consciousness, the scientists who were keeping it at arm's length to be a subject of religion, spirituality, and philosophy have ultimately thrown their hat to the ring. They have now taken it up. Why? Because in the development of science, they have finally proved that matter is a form of energy, thanks to Einstein. Now they say that energy is a form of consciousness. The entire universe is just energy and no matter. Now they say it is just consciousness and no energy. Therefore, the most crucial question for them to answer is, what is consciousness? The nuclear physicists, the chemists, the biologists, all are now in quest of consciousness and this shifting consciousness from time to time, hoping that possibly it will give them a clue to reach TOE, the theory of everything. Possibly It will solve all human problems finally, once for all. With this hope, they are in quest of this consciousness. To the main subject of the festival, think literature. We had heard read literature, study literature, write literature, create literature, patronize literature, etc., etc. But now you have said, think literature. If you hear, you doubt. If you see, you believe. If you live, you know. By hearing, you never know. Even by seeing also, you do not know. By living. You hear about Bhubaneswar staying at Delhi. You doubt. Possibly, as I see in the map, there is a city called Bhubaneswar down south towards the east. When you see, you believe, oh, well, yes, there is a city called Bhubaneswar. But when you live, not living in, living Bhubaneswar, breathing Bhubaneswar, you know what is Bhubaneswar. So, literature is to be lived. It is to be thought. You think literature, live literature. For entire mankind, there is only one literature. Language is a matter of small detail. Somebody writes in Russian, another writes in Spanish, the third writes in Bangla, and the fourth in Odia. Language is a matter of detail. Literature is just one. And when you become conscious of literature, two things are to be remembered. We remember two things. One is the creator and the creation. The creator is the poet. The creation is the poem or poetry. The relationship is very intimate because while creating, he is both the creator and the creation simultaneously. Every writer expresses himself only. He gathers experience that is filtered through him, everything becomes a part of him, and out of it grows literature. So he only writes about himself, his own thoughts, feelings, reactions, everything. So essentially, the creator and the creature are one and the same. Jiva Brahmaiva Naparam. The ultimate creator and this creature here are one and the same in essence. But they are not coextensive. The author, the creator, is always larger than his creation. The medium that you accept, our Padma Vibhushan, Sujukta Mohapatra, has accepted stone as the medium. The most resistant and yet the most faithful medium. Every single touch of the chisel is retained by this medium till the end. Not so with clay. It disappears in time. It's a very faithful medium, but very resistant medium. Medium has a limit. The creator plays with the medium, derives pleasure of creation, and then ultimately he tries to see his dream materialized in it. At a stage, the medium comes down on its knees and says, "O Master, you have given me a form, the form of an angel. I am just clay. You want the glow of gold on the skin. You want the dazzle of the star in its eyes. That is beyond me. I can't do it." The entire dream of the Creator is never reflected, never materialized through the medium because of the limitation of the medium. Therefore, the author contains in him much more than he has expressed through the medium. The author is larger than the work. Always larger. Savumim sarvatos prastva atyati stadashangulam. He has manifested a quarter of him as the universe, 3/4 remain unmanifest. The avyakta is always larger than the vyakta, but essentially they are the same. In essence, they are the same. Whether a shift in consciousness, in the level of consciousness, is helpful to realize this, whether a creator can live literature, think literature, and be literature totally, fully, or not, whether he remains larger than his creation, or at times the creation excels him, is to be answered through experience. And if a question is posed, is it essentially the same? Because right in front of us, Pashyedam devasya kavyam na ziryate na mamara. Here is the great epic of the Lord. It never decays, never dies. Is the Lord this only or more than this? Is the Lord, in essence, this creation or something different? The answer is not for the human intelligence to answer. Therefore, at the end, we have to accept the answer in the great silence that descends upon us after this query.